everyone, it's December, which means it's time for Advent of Code. Let's get started with day one. So I've done a little bit of pre-work. The first thing I've done is I've downloaded the inputs for day 1 through day 3, and I've created this script called Reindeer, and what it'll do is it'll basically run all of our day scripts, because most of these kind of have the same format. You grab a file, you take all the inputs, you parse the data, and then you do something with it, like some sort of algorithm. So what I'm doing is I've created this Nutcracker class, and what it's going to do is it's going to parse based on whatever file I have. And actually, I want to rename this to split int. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do file.splint.map exclamation mark and :2i. And what that'll do is it'll take my file, it'll split it using the defaults of split in Ruby, and then it'll iterate over each of those and convert them into an integer. So now if I go over here, this is basically what my daily file is going to look like. I'm gonna have crack because, you know, nuts crack and you also crack a code to like parse it. And what this is gonna be is I'm gonna say use split int here. And this is going to map to one of my Nutcracker things. And then over here in Reindeer, what I'm gonna do is the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the day, right? So we're gonna come over here into my Rails console, or not my Rails console, into my console. We're gonna come over here into my console, and I'm gonna type Ruby Reindeer 1. And that's gonna run my day 1 script. Oh. Ruby Reindeer .rb 1. And it's gonna run my script. It's going to call the right method in Nutcracker, which means it's going to parse our input into multiple things. And then it's going to convert them all into integers. And then what I can do is I can make whatever modifications inside of my day 1 file. And then all I need to do is in this deliver method, I need to return my result, which is going to be my parsed input. And then that will be printed when we're done. Except I don't actually need this returned because whatever the last line is automatically returned in Ruby. Alright, sounds good. So now let's talk about what Advent of Code is. Advent of Code is really cool. What it is you get 2 coding puzzles a day, every single day until Christmas, and you try to solve them. The first people to solve them get to go up on the leaderboard and they get more points than other people, but I just like the opportunity to practice coding and to practice new puzzles. Alright, so let's get started with day 1. The tyranny of the rocket equation. Santa has become stranded at the edge of the solar system while delivering presents to other planets. To accurately calculate his position in space, safely align his warp drive, and return to Earth in time to save Christmas, he needs you to bring him measurements from 50 stars. Collect stars by solving puzzles. 2 puzzles will be made available on each day in the Advent calendar. The second puzzle is unlocked when you complete the first. Each puzzle grants 1 star. Good luck! And then this is probably our first puzzle. The elves quickly load you into a spacecraft and prepare to launch. At the first go, no-go poll, every elf is go until the fuel counter upper. They haven't determined the amount of fuel required yet. Fuel required to launch a given module is based on its mass. Specifically, to find the fuel required for a module, take its mass, divide by 3, round down, and subtract 2. For example, for a mass of 12, divide by 3 and round down to get 4, then subtract 2 to get 2. For a mass of 14, dividing by 3 and rounding down still yields 4, so the fuel required is also 2. For a mass of 1969, the fuel required is 654. For a mass of 100,756, the fuel required is 33,583. The fuel counter upper needs to know the total fuel requirement. To find it, individually calculate the fuel needed for the mass of each module, your puzzle input, then add together all the fuel values. What is the sum of the fuel requirement for all of the modules on your spacecraft? To begin, get your puzzle input. So I've already got my puzzle input here, and what I've done is I've taken this and I've saved it as a text file inside of this basically project library. So this is my day 1 input, and as you can see, we've got 100 different inputs here. And like I mentioned before, over here in Reindeer, I've already got this Nutcracker send, my code that I want to crack this into. Because we've got, let's see, let's go ahead and pull up this input over here. Because we basically got a list of inputs, what I need to do is I need to split these. But when I split these, This entire file comes across as text, so I then need to convert it into an integer, which I've done over here. I've gone file.split.map and converted it into an integer like I talked about at the beginning of this episode. So now we hop into day one, right? And what we do is we have our array, and for our array, which is going to be input, I actually just want to call map again, and I'm going to create a second method called calculate fuel, and it's going to take in a param called mass. Now you'll notice I'm creating a lot of methods. I don't know if this is proper like functional programming or anything. It's just how I know how to code, so I'm going to try it. Alright, so now I take this mass, and I'm going to divide it by 4, right? So let's hop back over to our puzzle. Oops, here we go. So divide by 3 and round down, then subtract 2. Okay. So let's see, divide by 3. This is automatically going to be rounded, I think. Actually, let me check that really quick. So if I go over here, and I say 14 divided by 2, or 14 divided by 3. Oh, hold on. Ruby, 14 divided by 3. What do I get? Really? Alright, fine. Be that way. I'm going to say mass divided by 3 minus 2, and that's all it's going to return. That's pretty straightforward, actually. Yeah, so I would take this. Let me see. I don't know if I can do that with this. I can try, though. I can do, like, and colon. No, I don't think I can. Which means I gotta do a do, a block, mass, close that, and actually I'm gonna make this a one-liner. I'm gonna add my curly brace, mass, and I'm gonna say calculate fuel, and pass in my mass, and that's just what it's gonna return. And that's gonna be a closing curly brace. Yep, and then I gotta do input dot sum. I think that's a Ruby method. Let me check real quick. So let's see, we have Ruby array methods. Here's my class, Ruby 2.4.1. Let me do control, whoops, control F, and I gotta do sum. There it is. There's sum. Yep. So it's just gonna add everything together. So that works perfectly. I don't even need to do an exclamation mark. I just do sum. Now the one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comment this out. And I'm gonna see what this deliver returns. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna compare that return value to what we would expect to see. At least for the first couple. So let's go ahead and run Ruby Reindeer 1. So let's see, our first one is 61302, right? Let's hop over here. We're gonna say 61302 divided by 3, oops, divided by 3 is 204.34, so we should have 204.32. Let me hop over here, 204.32. That's looking good. Let's grab the next one, and if this one is good too, then I'm just gonna sum it and be done. Alright, let's see. So this one is 35317 minus 2 is 35315. So let's see what we got. 35315! Awesome, so that's great. I don't have any weird decimal places, which means the rounding down is working correctly. By the way, when you divide by integers in most programming languages, it just discards the decimal regardless of if you're half over or half under. Do we want to check that, or do we want to just go forward? I think we just go forward, because if it were going to give me a decimal, it'd give me a decimal, right? And this one actually is above 0.5, so this would be the one where it had an issue. And it hasn't, so we're good. Alright, cool. So now what we do is we just sum it. Oops, let me hop over to the right one. Alright, so I need to go here, remove that comment out. So now we're going to input.sum. Let's see, hop over here. And we're gonna run Ruby Reindeer 1. Oh no! Oh, I put input. Let me try making that input.sum. That might help a little bit. Alright, let's see. By the way, the reason we're using a bang on that map is because it mutates the original string. Okay, so our answer here is 3,363,929. Let's test this out in Advent of Code. So what we do is when we get an answer, we copy it. We head over to the Advent of Code website, and we enter this in our little answer section, and we click submit. That's the right answer. You are 1 gold star closer to rescuing Santa. Continue to part 2. During the second Go No Go poll, the elf in charge of the rocket equation double checker stops the launch sequence. Apparently, you forgot to include additional fuel for the fuel you just added. Fuel itself requires fuel just like a module. Take its mass, divide by 3, round down, and subtract 2. However, that fuel also requires fuel, and that fuel requires fuel, and so on. Any mass that would require negative fuel should instead be treated as if it requires 0 fuel. The remaining mass, if any, is instead handled by wishing really hard, which has no mass and is outside the scope of this calculation. Let's see, a module of mass 14 requires 2 fuel. This does not match our prior equation. So a module of mass 14 requires 2 fuel. This fuel requires no further fuel. 2 divided by 3. Oh no, wait. That is right. That is right. That does match our prior equation. Okay. A module of mass 14 requires 2 fuel. This fuel requires no further fuel because 2 divided by 3 and rounded down is 0, which would call for a negative fuel, so the total fuel required is still just 2. At first, a module of mass 1,969 requires 654 fuel. Then this fuel requires 216 more fuel. 216 then requires 70 more fuel, which requires 21 fuel, which requires 5 fuel, which requires no further fuel. So the total fuel required for a module of mass 1,969 is 654 plus 216 plus 70 plus 21 plus 5 plus 966. The fuel required by a module of mass 100,756 and its fuel is, and I'm not going to read this out because it's going to be a lot of thousands and y'all probably aren't going to remember. What is the sum of the fuel requirements for all the modules on your spacecraft when also taking into account the mass of the added fuel? Calculate the fuel requirements for each module separately, then add them all up at the end. I'm excited because this means we get to use recursion, and I like recursion. Alright, let me click this. Get my puzzle input. This is the same puzzle input that I started with, so I'm good to go. So now let's think about how I want to do this. I could of course use this existing def deliver, but I think what I actually want to do is kind of preserve that as like my day1.rb. So I'm gonna make, I think this should work. A new file called, let's see, I'm gonna Control A, Control C, Control V, Control S, and this is going to be day1b, which is kind of silly. Alright, but that's good. That makes me happy. Alright, so before we were doing this map where we calculate fuel, but now what we need to do, I don't know what to call this. Calculate fuel recursively? Total fuel for mass. I like that. That tells you what it is. The total fuel we need for the mass. And then this is just calculate fuel. So let's think about this. I have one record, right? So I would take my mass and I would calculate fuel for that mass, right? And then I would say, what am I gonna call this? I'm gonna call this initial fuel equals calculate fuel mass. No, wait. Yeah, I think so. Let's see. And then what we'd do is we would calculate fuel for initial fuel. This is looking right. And then this is fuel for fuel. It's dumb, but I like it. Alright, so we have our initial fuel, right? And that's when we calculate the fuel for this mass. Then we have our fuel for fuel, which is when we calculate the fuel for the initial fuel. Then what we want to do is we want to say, if, because recursion is all about your end cases, if fuel for fuel, let's say is less than 1, right? If fuel for fuel is less than 1, then we want to return initial fuel. Yeah. Else, what we're going to do is, is that right? No, that's not right. Do you know what it is? This right here is our final line where we say fuel for fuel equals calculate fuel, right? Yeah, so what you actually want is initial fuel plus calculate fuel for the initial fuel, right? And then what you say is on this initial fuel, if, yeah, you want to say return 0 if initial fuel is less than 1. You don't want to return whatever comes back because you could get a -2 if there's 0 fuel. Right. Okay, so our initial fuel is calculate fuel for mass, return 0 if initial fuel is less than 1, right? That's our return. Otherwise, we go into the recursive part of this, which is initial fuel plus calculate fuel. This calculate fuel right here will never return until this return statement up here is hit by something. And then this, like, calculate fuel will return. And then the next one will return. And then the next one will return. I think for this one, I actually want total fuel, though. So my initial fuel is calculate fuel for the mass, right? And that's going to give me a number. And that's what I want. I want a number. And then, if that initial fuel is less than 1, I return 0. If that initial fuel is greater than 1, then I want to run this total fuel again. Ooh, I like this. I like this a lot. You know what? I might just do reindeer.rb 1b. Aww. Oh, there's no 1b input. Okay, so that wasn't a great idea. This 1b naming scheme was not a good idea. And I need to be able to run part 2s all week, right? So maybe what I need is like a present, is like a flag, right? So we have day is RB, and then we have puzzle equals argv1, right? Yep. Yep, that sounds right. So our day is going to be 1, our puzzle is going to be 2, and then I need something else instead of deliver, right? So get rid of this. This is going to stay the same each day. My deliver is what changes, and I add this total fuel method. So let me control X those. Let me delete this file. Yeah, remove that. And then in here, we'll add these. And instead of deliver, I need something else. Something Christmassy and also punny. What if I passed in something like heart or puzzle? And I kept it at deliver, but then I said if puzzle equals 1. We input.map, calculate fuel, else. And how about that? Yeah, because I'm probably gonna branch at that point anyway. Yeah, and then I just make this input, comma, puzzle, whether it's part 1 or part 2. That sounds good. Yep. Alright, so now all I have to do is I have to say, Ruby Reindeer Day 1 Puzzle 2. Uh-oh. Deliver, map, block and deliver. Okay, so I've got an error in Day 1 RB 19 total fuel, undefined local variable or method initial fuel for main object. Did I mean... Oh, I just misspelled initial fuel. Initial fuel. How about that? How about that? Okay. Let's see. Oh, I thought I already fixed that. Let's see, this is line 20. Line 20. I did it again! Alright. Yes, those are all initial fuel now. I misspelled initial in half of the times. Alright, so that just ran. These are my results. Okay, so here's one thing that I want to do, kind of. I want to check these a little bit. Are any of these smaller in my input? No, they are not. Okay. That is delightful. Well, this is where I kind of have to ask if I trust myself. And I think that I do. You know what I mean? So I think maybe what I'll do is I'll copy this. I'll come right over here. And untested. Untested. I nailed a recursive problem. Alright, that's the right answer. You are 1 gold star closer to rescuing Santa. You have completed Day 1. Awesome! Thank you all so much for watching. So I'm going to continue doing these lunchtime advent calendar videos for the rest of December, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Okay, we've got 30 seconds before YouTube whisks you away somewhere else, so start furiously clicking. There's a like button, subscribe button, bell icon. I've got links and stuff in the description. What else? There's social links below me. Ooh, if Future Rachel did her job right, there's a video over here. Ooh. What else? Oh, most importantly, thank you for watching. I don't know if we'll ever see each other again, or if you're going to another of my videos. So, aloha.